Hey there, I'm a glue stick, so I have one job. I glue kid stuff. So sorry for being jealous of Geico, who does a ton more, like give you 24/7 access to thousands of licensed agents. And Geico has been around for over 75 years and has a 97% customer satisfaction rating. While I've just got mediocre adhesive skills, Geico also has an award-winning mobile app. Uh-oh, arts and crafts time. No eating the glue stick, Miss Lydia!
Geico. Expect great savings and a whole lot more.
You're in the 06010. Never gonna hustle in case you didn't know. Matthew Berry, TMR.
You guys go ahead, give me grief for being on SportsCenter for 45 seconds.
I think you could do better than me because I don't think you could.
Jailbait, Field Yates.
You're terrible at hashtag improv. At Field Yates. At Field Yates.
Stefania Bell.
Oh, don't let Barry convert you.
Secret Squirrel, Daniel Dodd.
Make it happen.
Mediocre fantasy advice.
You're older than people realize.
That never stops.
Loyal 06010 listener.
What's up, Twitter? What's up, America? What's up, all those watching? This is the Fantasy Focus Football Podcast, but I guess it's kind of not really a podcast because we're doing this live. What could possibly go wrong? Hello and welcome.
Especially with that guy in the house.
My name is Field Yates.
You
That's
are indeed
Stefania
Field
Bell.
Yates. That's
This is
Stefania
Matthew
Bell.
Berry. And
It's
if
true.
one of us is likely to say something they regret on this show,
Who do you think
it's
it would
him.
be?
I disagree with that. I disagree with that completely. I'll tell you this much. There is in terms of who is most likely to say something they regret, it's these two. Who's most likely to say something to get us fired, in trouble, fined, suspended? It's me. Obviously, make no mistake about that. But regret?
Oh, okay.
Absolutely
We
no
were so
remorse.
remorse.
Oh my goodness, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. So let's level set here for a few things here for a second. First off, a couple of things here. You're wondering why is it not switching around, right? We're in the old Rosillo Canal, the new Wingo and Golick studio. It's filled with all sorts of bells and whistles. And we're broadcasting from there.
We've made it our own, by the way.
Yeah,
Because
we
have,
right,
we
of
got
course.
The bitter berries here.
We took
the
our $10 worth of trinkets and we put it all out there. And so coming up today on the show, by the way, we're going to do a year-end wrap-up. We're giving out a bunch of awards. We'll have a lot of fun. We'll do all this. But where there's only one camera, you're going to see this angle. For those of you watching on the Twitter, on the Periscope, and wherever else you might be seeing it, you're only going to see one camera, and that's because it's a snowpocalypse. For those of you not aware, on
it's a bomb cyclone.
Yeah, it is Winter Storm Grayson, and as a result of Winter Storm Grayson, pretty much everyone at ESPN is staying home. They're staying safe. They're staying with their loved ones. They're
essential personnel only.
Essential personnel only, and then us.
Thought that he would be included under essential personnel.
And weirdly, for a television broadcast that's going out to the many millions that follow us on the Twitter there, apparently essential people do not include somebody to actually switch the cameras. Literally, this has been planned for like a month. And so the one person, we don't know if it's a male or female, we're not going to say the person's name, but the one person whose job it is to just go camera 1, camera 2, camera 3, whatever it is, they pieced out. They were like, they saw the snowpocalypse, they saw Winter Storm Grayson, they're like, you know what, I'm going to go home. I don't need to be here. And so anyway, you're stuck with this one camera angle. I'll just let you know that Stefania didn't want to sit here because it was her bad side. So luckily we've got Stefania. I said I don't have a bad side. They're all terrible. So I'll take the bad side. So I can either turn to you two guys and talk to you there, or I can talk to you in the audience there. The only disappointing part for me is that I don't get everyone to get a chance to look at this sweet Eat, Drink, Fantasy sweatshirt available at fantasylife.com, where of course 50% of the proceeds go to the Jimmy V Foundation for cancer research. But you'll just have to imagine in all its splendor or check it out at fantasylife.com.
Have you covered all your bases yet?
I have. I think I'll make fun of the fact that you guys and I are stuck here, whereas the person that's supposed to direct this bailed. But other than that, yeah, I'm good.
So for those who may not actually listen to the podcast, we're the Fantasy Focus Football Podcast. We're with you every single day during the football season, in a rare exception during the postseason as well. We're going to hand out some hardware. Of course, if you don't get all of our jokes, that's okay. Some people don't even laugh at the ones that they do understand. But for those who are loyal 06010 listeners, you'll probably understand a lot of the usual garb that we will throw back and forth at each other. Before we get to some of these awards, because
I'm tweeting, by the way. If anyone wants to know what it looks like when I tweet, this is it.
I'm sure
So if you're following me on
everybody-
Twitter, and this is what it looks like. See, a lot of people have people that do their own Twitter. They have social media managers and people
But you
that
know
do
what?
this kind of stuff. I do my own
You know
Twitter.
what you don't do? You can't multitask like young Field here, who does it.
Field
and,
Yates is a machine.
And also runs the show
100%.
seemlessly at the same time. You
he's
have
breaking.
to
He's
stop
breaking
and call attention
news.
to yourself.
He's liking posts on Instagram.
That's right.
He's a social media machine.
Yes, we could all take
You
a
and
lesson.
I are more
Don't
old
put me
school.
in your
No,
category.
Stefania's pretty machine-like in her social media
fine, it's
presence.
me.
Let's get to the year in review podcast, though. By beginning, I can multitask, but I can't talk coherently. With a lot of thank yous, because there are basically innumerable people that work on this podcast and make it a reality every single day. So, amongst
Is that what we're calling this? A reality?
well, whatever. Amongst those, we deserve to thank endlessly Jonathan Luna, who oversees the video team.
Yeah,
for
Luna's
us.
great.
Props to Luna.
You can see it all over the app. You can see it all over the website. You can see it all over every basically form of social media that you can find. Stevelyn Wilson also works with him. Stevelyn, I think, was a mid-season acquisition that, like, anytime you join the podcast
did.
mid-season and you survive, that right there is a feather in your cap.
He was like the waiver wire pickup.
That's
In
right.
On
fairness,
the tech
Secret
side.
Scroll joined us mid-season once. That lowered the bar for the ability to
Wow.
join us.
Stop vulturing my segment here. Jennifer Somack, who actually took a break, she claims to have got married during the middle of this season.
You know
We're
what?
not so sure if she just needed a couple weeks off.
She went to the U, so she's all
Shout
good
out,
with me.
Jennifer helps on the video side as well. We have countless directors to thank. Kyle Soppe, if you don't know him, you should. He's our research maven. Kyle puts in more work than anybody I could possibly
Kyle
imagine
showed up today.
into this. Yeah, of course.
Not only
Kyle's
that,
here.
Kyle
Kyle's-
did the most work leading up to the show today of anybody.
Kyle and Keith Lipscomb. Keith, as
Look
you
at-
know him, is
Jacob
not cool
getting
Keith.
upset behind
I'm
glass.
going to. You have
What are you
to
gonna
be
do?
kidding me.
I said
We have
Kyle
one
did-
camera for 45 minutes, Secret Squirrel.
Yeah, sorry.
I said
We have one camera
Kyle
for
did
45
the
minutes.
most
You had
work.
one
I've been
job.
planning this for
You had
a month and
how
a
long
half.
have you been planning it?
A month and a half.
At
Matthew
any
Berry.
point during planning it, did getting us a director include in your plans?
Hey, stop.
For a
Can you be
broadcast?
positive?
I am being positive.
Was
I'm
your New
positively
Year's
wondering
resolution to
why
be-
in your month-long planning, I'm just thinking of the fans. A lot of people like, this is not me. I'm doing the same job, whether there are multiple cameras or there's just one.
Okay,
but the
okay,
fact
okay,
of the matter
okay.
is I think of you, the fans. Everyone else only cares about themselves. You know who
All right,
I
so
care
we
about? I
have
care
to
about
do
you
this.
guys.
Let's do this.
Let's do
If
this.
you have won the Celebrity League, you can talk on the microphone.
Oh.
If you haven't,
Can I leave?
Well,
Does
you
that mean
have
I
to
can
be
leave?
quiet.
Can I go home to my
Daniel.
family? Can I go see my little kids in their little snowy
please.
outfits?
Yes, please
All right,
do that. It
cool.
would help us all. So Kyle, Keith Lipscomb, who is the liaison between the podcast and the fantasy team. He makes sure that everything that is accounted for on the podcast is properly accounted for on the fantasy side. So many others behind the scene. Of course, Pete Genesini, who oversees podcasting here at ESPN. And Daniel, we love you. I'm going to speak for us. For us. Stefania and I right now. I speak
right.
for us when I say that we love you, Daniel. You are the glue that holds this entire operation together. We are thankful for that every single day. So we're going to hand out some hardware. And I guess if there was
You
hardware
lied
to
to me.
hand out for board
I was
bets-
lied to. I was told I could leave, and then I was told I couldn't.
Okay.
I was lied to.
Remember, you're part of a 3-person show here. So allow others to speak besides just you.
I tried to leave.
Okay,
I tried
good.
to leave to let you guys talk. They made me come back in.
Oh, gosh. Can we try that again? Maybe we can let them...
there is no trying it again. We're live.
All right, we're live. So let's begin with the board
Do
bets,
it live.
board bets portion of the show, which I'll make brief.
We got to move. Let's just get to the awards.
Okay,
Like I said,
thank
we're running
you.
late
I
on.
wonder
We're running late on
why-
time. We just
why-
got to
why-
get through it. We just got to.
Why do you want to
Matthew
move past
somehow
the board
wants
bets?
to get... Yeah, that's right. Matthew, of course, wants to move past the board bets because for the second consecutive year, this guy...
No.
This
First off,
guy took him home.
I take issue with the second consecutive year. You absolutely won this year. You won. You won 10 to 9 or 11 to 10. You
10
won
to
by
9.
1. 10 to 9.
Yep.
You won this year by one board bet. We'll go through a few of them. Congratulations to you, Field. You won fair and square.
Yep.
Last year you did not win. I take issue. I take umbrage. I take exception. Thank you, Stefania. Thank you, Princeton,
know why
for
I'm
Why are you helping him,
I don't know,
Stefania?
I don't know.
because last year you only won because of a fraudulent and illegal cornhole game. Taking the cornhole game out of it, I believe we tied. Anyway, this year, a couple of board bets that I thought were sort of interesting here.
A couple means 2, by the way, just so you're aware, because this is normally where you get, give us 18.
like Martellus Bennett a top 10 tight end this season in total points. You said yes, I said no.
Right. No, I think
we had a board bet on Martellus Bennett over under 7.5 touchdowns this season. You took the over there. He had 0. I took the under. I won that one as well. There was another one where in week 4, Matthew Stafford, a top 12 quarterback. You said yes, I said no. He was 22nd that week. That was one that I won.
It's
just
really
trying to review a few of
interesting,
these.
theme
Just
that
trying
I'm
to review a
noticing
few
here.
of these real quickly.
How about the very first one? Mike Glennon, top 24 quarterback this season.
That actually makes
on
me
a points
lose
per game
track.
basis. Yeah, that one did not work out my
Oh.
way. No, and
Sorry,
Field won
Field.
that one, and he won a few others.
No,
So
Field
the fact of the
won
matter
that
is 10-9. Field wins the board bet.
Technically, it was 10-8. It is 10-8 actually, because I made a bet with Field on your behalf of which Deshaun was going to be the better Deshaun.
Right.
I said Deshaun Kaiser. He said Deshaun Watson. Technically, it was Deshaun Kaiser. So I actually beat Field in board bets 1-0, and Field beat you.
Had
So
that gone the other way, you would have counted it for Field, though.
I think what that means is I technically win the board bets this year
That's
because
fine with
I
me.
beat
I'm fine
Field.
with that. That sounds
Daniel
that sounds
is
completely
undefeated
reasonable.
in board bets. All the same, we have a lot of fun with those, and we thank those who manage the board. Kyle, who of course oversees all of those board bets throughout the season.
I still want to recount because I feel like there's board bet missings. I feel like we made more than 19
Okay,
board bets.
go ahead. Go for it.
I don't
bud.
want
go
to.
ahead and go back.
I'm going to hire somebody to do this.
Yeah.
Let's hand
I'll
out-
but just very quickly, in all seriousness, legit congratulations to you. But just to show you how close this is, again, you beat me 10-9. But
This is gonna be good, Stefan.
No.
Yeah,
The
sure.
difference of it was the very last board bet we made randomly, and this is why I thought we had more, because I feel like we made ones beyond week 15. But anyway, more points in week 15, Jerick McKinnon or Latavius Murray. Murray had 19.4, which is who I had. You had McKinnon at 20.8. So literally 1.4 fantasy points is what separated defeat from victory this year over a course of an entire season. So
let's get to the
dangerously
awards that
close.
matter. Yeah, another win for me. Let's get to the awards that matter, and that, of course, are our
the
season-long
People's Champ.
awards. That's debatable.
Nah,
They're
the
basically
People's
two
Champ.
schools of thought. Those who voted
You guys were
in
with me,
this
right?
year's awards,
I mean, it's
Matthew, Stefania, myself, Mike Clay, who was a big part of the show this year. We thank him as well. Tristan Cockcroft, Eric Carabell, Anita Marks, who won our women's league this year. Daniel,
out.
Keith, Kyle, Al Zeidenfeld, who of course will be doing a Thursday podcast, the DFS variety with me throughout the postseason.
and that the new one posted already, right?
Yep.
You in week
Yes.
one, the
First one.
wild card. So download that, check it out.
And
Listen.
no joke, Tom Thibodeau. Not the NBA coach, the official fan of the 06-0-0.
Yeah, he really is.
Tom Thibodeau, who
We love
shows
Tom.
up. He has been to every live show
live
that
show
we have
we've
had,
done.
whether it was
Literally
in,
every live show, no
Every
matter
live
where we
show.
are, he shows
I think
up.
he's 7 for 7.
It's
Yeah.
amazing.
He
That
shows
dude's
up to the
awesome.
podcast more than Matthew does. So let's begin with our awards. The 1 week
That was
wonder.
that was pretty good. I got to be honest with you. That was a good one.
The best
nice job.
performance-
Also true.
Most
Funny
of these
'cause it's
awards
true.
are going to be implicit and they're going to be understood based off what they are titled. But for those who may have some difficulty understanding what a 1 week wonder is, it's a performance that seemingly came out of nowhere. And being a one-hit wonder is in like a band. Who's Daniel? You're the music guy.
So,
Who's your
no.
favorite one-hit wonder of all time?
Probably REO Speedwagon.
Stop.
Wait,
They're not a one hit.
They're not a one-hit wonder. That does
We
not
talked
count.
about Chumbawamba.
Chumbawamba.
Was a
No,
one-hit
I
wonder.
think my favorite one-hit wonder probably would be Semisonic.
What was their one hit?
Closing time, right?
Closing time.
Oh,
Yep.
got it.
I actually that was the first
That's
time in
nice.
the podcast history that I've actually picked up on a reference
Nice
that
job.
like predated 1997.
Good for you, buddy.
I know.
I mean, again, shows you how old I am. So you won't get
Yeah.
any of these fields, but maybe
So
Daniel.
you are
Stefania might.
Semisonic's uncle.
Thanks a lot.
No,
Quit
but
bringing me into your old jokes,
You
your
have
old
the
references.
you guys have the same musical background reference that I do. See if you get these one hit wonders, because Kyle won't even have heard of these. Men Without Hats,
Yep.
Oh yeah,
Safety dance,
for sure.
Safety
Dance.
Dance. That's
Yeah.
one of my
Very
all
proud
time
of that.
favorite one hit wonders. Dexy's Midnight Runners.
Yeah, come on, Eileen.
Yep. Come on,
Come
Eileen.
on,
Also
Eileen.
good.
Great
Winner.
wedding song
Winner.
right there.
Yeah.
Great
wedding song.
Great wedding song. Chumbawamba's also right up there, I think, in terms of
1
one-hit
week
wonders.
wonders. Here are the
I follow that.
nominees.
But anyway, but we're saying, but to be clear here, we're saying these are not one-hit wonders. This is the best performance that seemingly came out of nowhere.
Right.
Even if they later went on to great fantasy success. So what's the best performance that seemingly came out of nowhere?
The nominees are Rod Smith for the Dallas Cowboys, Week 14. He had 33 points. Remember those 2 long touchdowns. Juju Smith-Schuster, Week 8. The emergence of Juju. He, of course, became a revelation for the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. Keelan Cole from Jacksonville via Kentucky Wesleyan. 31.6 points in Week 15. And Mercedes Lewis, 28.2 points in Week 3. Good for one random good game a year over each of the last 3 to 5 seasons. The winner is and this is a big one here, like probably the most important day of his life. Juju Smith-Schuster all the way back in week 8. He got 41.7% of the votes.
Here's what's fantastic. I just want to let everyone in on something. So literally we had a half hour production. No, so I'm going to explain it to the audience. We had a half hour. We met here at 6:30. We're live on at 7.
That was just
we had a
the
half hour production meeting prior to the show to go through all the mechanics
I thought that was
of
only
everything
for
like
when
that.
we did the big part.
No. And so as part of it, like, we realized we only had one camera and the director wasn't here or whatever. And then Stefania, and we switched where Stefania was going to sit so we catch her good side. And then we decided like how it was going to go. And what was decided was Field was going to read and explain the award and read the nominations. And then Stefania was going to announce the winner. And then I was going to be the first person to talk about why that person won. That's literally the entire half hour talked about trying to figure out that choreography. We're already one award.
That was when we started with the awards that are over there on that beautiful trophy. But
this was an award.
But not on the trophy, not on that big trophy over there.
Vanya, would you like to talk?
The winner is.
Who won?
You'll never guess. Juju Smith-Schuster.
What could
Pittsburgh
possibly go
Steelers.
wrong? We want to put you guys on live.
Can we have
What
a mulligan
could possibly
here?
Go wrong.
Can we have a mulligan and just speed forward to game of the year?
Matthew,
Yeah.
go ahead. So start talking. Explain
So
about Juju.
here's the thing. So in terms of the voting, by the way, and so you named all the people that voted on this. For us, Stefania and I both voted for Juju Smith-Schuster, which was the correct vote. Field, you voted for Rod Smith. We'll let you explain why you incorrectly chose Rod Smith. But for me, what I chose is that in addition to coming out of nowhere, right, prior to this game, he'd only seen more than 4 targets in a game, only twice. And, you know, he...
For me, it was partly how low he was started. Like, he really, the evidence of coming out of nowhere, people didn't know who he was.
But I felt like it had to be, because there's tons of performances. So in terms of for us, for our purposes, for fantasy football, it had to be somebody that it sort of came out of nowhere, a big explosive performance, but one that you could have kind of used. And so Martavis Bryant didn't play in that game, and so people thought, hey, maybe there's a chance Juju Smith-Schuster gets some extra love in this game. We'd seen flashes of it, but hadn't really done anything. And then in that particular game, he had 7 catches for 193 yards and a touchdown. Of course, he had that huge long, the 95-yarder or whatever it was. Started in less than 15% of leagues, to find you to your point.
All right, but go to the game of the year now, and I'm not going to screw this up. I'm going to give you the nominees. Here they are.
Why did you vote for Rod Smith, though?
He had 33 points in week 14. That was like one of the last 2 weeks people were actually considering using Rod Smith. Like, I can't imagine his start percentage was super high that week, but
I would think it was
in deeper
low.
leagues, as we get closer to the playoffs, you might not have a choice. Like, there's not a bunch of options available that you can rely upon. So let's get to the game of the year.
Real quickly before we move on, which do you regret more? As we talk about regret, which we started the show off of, do you regret not voting for Juju Smith-Schuster, which obviously was the correct call, or do you regret completely cutting Stefania off and announcing the winner in the last award?
I apologize to Stefania. So
you've already done that, and that's between you and Stefania. I don't want to interfere in that. I love both of you equally.
I told you,
but I'm just curious which you regret more.
I regret that more, Matthew Berry. But again,
all right. Last questions for you. Do you regret that? Or do you regret when 2 years ago when they came to you and said, "Hey, we have an opening on the Fantasy Focus podcast. Would you like to work with Matthew Berry every day?" Was that it?
That's exactly what I was referring to. The game of the year. The options,
winner,
the nominees
chicken dinner.
are Julio Jones in Week 12, 50.8 points. He had 253 yards in that game against the Buccaneers. Todd Gurley makes the list twice. In Week 16, he had 49.6 points, 2 receiving touchdowns. In Week 15. He had 45 points because he had 3 rushing touchdowns. He gashed the Seattle defense. And Kareem Hunt all the way back in Week 1. Matthew's ride or die back against the Patriots in Week 1. 45.6 points. Talk about coming out with a bang. Remember, his very first NFL carry, Kareem Hunt, fumbled the football.
Yes.
The winner, without further ado, is...
with 58.3% of the vote. So it was technically a close vote. Todd Gurley's Week 16 performance.
Congratulations to TG3.
Todd gets applause.
Yeah, Secret Squirrel finally with the with the drop.
He's on the production now.
So
good job.
Took him a month to come up with that. By the way,
that was the finals in a lot of leagues, obviously.
Yeah, and that's what's curious to me. So Field, you and I both voted for Todd Gurley. Princeton over there voted for Julio Jones.
Yeah,
But I don't understand. Hang on for a second. Yeah. We'll let you defend yourself in a second, Field. But I think your point is well taken. For me, what it was, it's the best single game performance of the 2016 season. That was the description. Game of the year, the best single game game performance. And I don't know how it gets any better than week 16, the fantasy finals, where he comes up with almost 50 points. Like, he literally wins you the league. Like, and we've seen, and it's a story that's gotten a ton of publicity, and I'm so thrilled for it. You know, Michael Gelkin of the Las Vegas Review-Journal came up with the idea, and a bunch of people, including myself, have amplified it. But, over $20,000 has been raised to the Shriners Hospital, in donations in Todd Gurley's name, because he helped people win so many fantasy leagues, and it's been done for lots of other players as well. But over $20,000 to the Shriners Hospital alone, thanks to Todd Gurley.
It's
clear. Unbelievable.
So, Game of the year. Like, that's a nice post-benefit.
The best
that's
single game performance of the 2016 season.
Right. And so, I don't know. Math isn't that hard for me. 50.8 points for Julio Jones beats Todd Gurley's 49.6. And to me,
by 1.2 points.
Here's a game of the year, most fantasy points. To me, it was Julio Jones, who also had been stifled this year. Granted, it was not a great fantasy year for Julio. You can't deny the athlete that he is. But that game, and here, this is where it gets bittersweet. That game teased every fantasy owner who had Julio to think that it was going to be something that you were going to see throughout the rest of the playoffs. And
100%, certainly a frustrating season for people that had Julio Jones on their roster, Stefania. But I think, Field, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I would assume that the timing of Todd Gurley's game factored into your voting, because it certainly did with me.
Yeah, that was a tiebreaker for me. I totally get Stefania's logic, but 49.6 points in the finals. I can't imagine too many people lost their finals if they were starting Todd Gurley.
I mean, frankly, for me, second, if I couldn't vote for that game, I would have voted for Week 15 Todd Gurley. Julio Jones was further down on the list, again, to do it in the fantasy playoffs.
Let's get to the comeback player of the year.
Cared that it was fantasy playoffs?
What?
I don't think he did. I think he was just Todd Gurley being Todd Gurley all week long. And maybe the fact that Todd Gurley was so good all year is kind of why I was like, yeah, it's just another Todd Gurley performance.
Quickly, shout out to Sean McVay. You like fantasy football.
Yes.
The business of it, we can
Sean McVay.
Comeback player of the year for 2017. The player that was either injured or disappointing in 2016. The three nominees are Keenan Allen, Los Angeles Chargers wide receiver who was limited to just one half of one game back in 2016 because of a torn ACL. Todd Gurley, who was running back 21 in 2016. Or DeAndre Hopkins, who with a roulette of quarterbacks in 2016, including, remember this, the Brock Osweiler experience?
Sure.
Wide receiver 36. The winner is...
All good candidates, by the way.
Sure.
All great candidates for comeback player of the year.
I'm really questioning the math here that's written down on the paper because last time... Okay.
I'll
You're going to explain that?
Yep.
All right. Okay. The winner is DeAndre Hopkins. And look, I love DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins won me a championship in the league with that spectacular catch.
Won you a championship,
that's right,
Stefania Bell, and yet didn't earn your vote here.
You know why?
Well, Stefania obviously.
What did I say about Keenan Allen for the start of the year? And Keenan Allen played one half of one game last year. You talk about going from, if you calculated fantasy points, I think he had 0. Maybe he had a catch in that game. He had a catch or two before he tore his ACL. But you go from that to what he did this year, and there were a number of championship teams that had him on the roster. And this guy, to me, was amazing. He had 2015, he ended after 8 games with a lacerated kidney. 2016, one half of one game with ACL. He comes back and competes in every single game and does it at a high level.
He was phenomenal for the LA Chargers. He basically carried them down the stretch, too. There was a just before the playoff stretch where Keenan Allen was posting like 25 points regularly in PPR scoring. So the timing of his surge also helped. My vote on DeAndre Hopkins was just because the quarterback play did him in 2016. The fact that it did not do him in 2017, starting with Tom Savage, of course, catching fire with Deshaun Watson, but then keeping it up. Deshaun Watson tears his ACL, and all of us are like, oh, man, does that mean DeAndre Hopkins because DeAndre Hopkins at 2016 again? No. Now, granted, he got to play with one of the best quarterbacks in league history in TJ Yates for a handful of starts down the stretch, but still... He was unbelievable, start to finish.
I think you could have given it to any one of these players. They all are deserving for me. And look, Keenan Allen was a big preseason sleeper for me. And one of the things I kept saying in the preseason, and honestly, it was entirely based on Stefania, which I kept saying is that, look, there's a difference between being injury prone and unlucky. A lot of people think Keenan Allen is injury prone. He has just been unlucky. And Stefania and I talked about this many times in the preseason about the lacerated kidney. Like, who gets a lacerated kidney? And you know, in the ACL and everything like that. But, you know, he'd injured it early enough, and we expect him to be back. The reason I voted for DeAndre Hopkins over Keenan Allen is that Keenan Allen has always been good. He's always been elite. Now, you know, this year is a great year. 4th in receptions, 3rd in receiving yards in the NFL. But the argument against Keenan Allen was never about his talent or his production. It was always about, can he stay healthy through a full 16 games? And it was a great call by you, Stefania, and it obviously worked out for me, and entirely my call was, you know, largely based on you. I gave DeAndre Hopkins because I thought comeback player of the year, this wasn't from injury, it was just from performance. And DeAndre Hopkins, who had 65 or more receiving yards in all but 3 games this season, 2 different games against the Jaguars, where he scored 18 or more fantasy points. He was matchup, you know, he wasn't matchup dependent at all through 3 different quarterbacks, you know, including a rookie, including a guy that was on his couch, you know, when the season started, in TJ Yates. So for me, my vote went to Hopkins. It was super close, but he was just so unbelievably dominant. You know, almost 100 catches, almost 1,400 yards, 13 touchdowns in 15 games.
Let's get to the biggest
second best
disappointment.
wide receiver.
Let's get to the biggest disappointment of the season. Pretty self-explanatory here. The player that was the biggest letdown this season based off both draft position and production. The nominees
last year,
were...
Field, just as a precursor, last year the winner of biggest disappointment was...
No, I'm sorry. The biggest disappointment
Yeah.
was DeAndre Hopkins, right?
Last year was Todd Gurley, biggest
Todd
disappointment.
Gurley. How
Wow.
about that?
So there you go. So whoever wins this book, whoever wins this award, just something to shoot
come
for.
back next year.
Right there.
Right.
By the way, at some point I thought, again, just to show you how efficient our pre-production meetings are, the conversation had been also that people were going to be able to comment and talk to us.
Oh yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
Well, so give us some comments. We haven't heard any. Well, we can react to people. All I know is that Modesto_18 says, love you, Field. So there you go, Field.
Thank
Modesto
you.
loves you.
Thank you, Modesto. I love you too. Nominees: Jordy Nelson, an average draft position of 8.
Supposedly it was going to be up on the screen and we could react to it.
Okay,
Is that not happening?
8.0 for Jordy Nelson. That was 4th amongst wide receivers. Amari Cooper's ADP was 23.4. Wide receiver 10. Terrell Pryor's ADP of 32.2, wide receiver 14. And Matt Ryan, ADP of 42, top of the 5th round, quarterback 4. And the winner, Starfania, is?
The winner for biggest disappointment. Last year's comeback player of the year, I believe.
Correct, yeah.
Jordy Nelson.
This
Wow,
is insane.
you need like jeers and
This
boos.
is an awful award. I just want you to
right.
know, I'm going to take a moment here to talk about Secret Squirrel, Mike, Keith, Not Cool Keith, Eric Carabo, number 1 fan Thomas. They all voted for Jordy Nelson. I voted for Terrell Pryor. Field, you voted for Terrell
yes.
Pryor as well. Stefan, you voted for Amari Cooper. We'll talk about all this for a second. I think this is unfair to give to Jordy Nelson because Jordy Nelson
Correct.
was very productive until Aaron Rodgers went down, and then obviously he went down. But the fact of the matter is that Jordy Nelson, as long as Aaron Rodgers was the quarterback, was a very productive fantasy wide receiver and absolutely earned his draft position.
Whoa.
Terrell Pryor, hang on, let me finish and then you can talk. Terrell Pryor was drafted by ADP, and listen, I will take the blame here. I'll take the hit because I was on board in a big way. You guys know how much I love Terrell Pryor. Field Yates eats Blue Apron every single day thanks to my love of Terrell Pryor.
It is
and on my Redskins,
Still eating
I thought he was going to
as
have
a
a monster
result.
year. So he was on a preseason love list. So listen, I was as hyped about him as anyone going into that offense, and he did nothing. Terrell Pryor had only 1 game this year with more than 3 catches. His ADP was higher than DeAndre Hopkins.
All right, Stefania, make the case for Amari Cooper.
Did you watch Amari Cooper play football this year?
I did.
I did, yeah. I also
It was
traded
me.
him, and then a day later he went for 44 points.
I know. So, but that's even worse because you know what he could do if he was there were some alligator arms there.
Right.
There was a lot of poor performance. Then he ended up getting hurt. That's
People
not him.
they're on the live stream, by the way, they're totally agreeing with me. They're like, agree with Barry 100%. Matthew's a homer. I am a homer, absolutely.
Yeah,
Come on.
you know, of course you're calling out the ones who agree with you. But look,
Yep.
Amari Cooper, relative to draft position, I thought underperformed, and a lot of it was skill mistakes. You know,
Cooper was drafted as wide receiver 10, Terrell Pryor wide receiver 14. Jordy Nelson was wide receiver 4, but again,
Terrell Pryor, it felt like he wasn't used well either.
And it didn't feel like he was 100% healthy either.
Right.
Also,
so you put all of that in the mix.
Amari Cooper had the most Amari Cooper finish of the season with a catch for 87 yards and a touchdown in week 17 against the Chargers.
But there were at least a couple of
and you weren't starting him at that point because you weren't trusting him because he had been such a disappointment.
No, he'd been up and down, although some people did start him. The big game against Kansas City, I don't know if they necessarily started him, against San Diego in the last the Chargers in the last week. But Field, you voted for Terrell Pryor as well. Like, you got nothing out of this guy that was like a third-round pick that, again, there are people that had the choice between DeAndre Hopkins and Terrell Pryor for wide receiver 1 or 2 this year, and they went with Pryor, and it changed their season. He was a fourth-round pick, an early fourth-round pick in ESPN standard draft.
Listen, I eat delicious home-cooked meals with sustainable ingredients. I do not besmirch the name of Terrell Pryor.
No, of course not.
Instead, I ask us to go to the waiver wire wonder of the year, the player who held the most fantasy value after not being drafted inside the top 160
you just love being
players.
Right. This is what the Twitter.
I'm a man of the people.
I just want to say really quickly, the reason why Jordy Nelson should be this is because you cannot win your fantasy championship in the first round, but you can lose it. And Jordy Nelson being the number 4 wide receiver off the board, a guy that you took in the first round, you kept rolling with him throughout the season. Terrell Pryor, people eventually bailed, but Jordy, every week it was like, how much?
And
eventually got to a point, and then
games with Hundley, you bailed on. Yeah. You at least benched.
But there was a much longer track record with Jordy Nelson, so you stuck with him longer than you would have with Terrell Pryor.
He gave you 8 weeks of fantasy production. You got
did not give you
a good
8
season out of Jordy Nelson.
He gave you 4.5, 5 weeks of good production.
I think that Daniel, just to wrap this up quickly, I think that yes, you're right. You cannot win your draft in the first round, but you can lose it. The question is it Jordy's fault that his production slipped versus like drafting running backs in previous years, like a Todd Gurley last year, whose production slipped because
I don't know, man, because he, like, of all the other Green Bay wide receivers there, like, he just looked done. Without Aaron Rodgers, he just looks done.
Well, you know,
it's definitely a conversation we'll have in the offseason. I don't think he deserves to be biggest disappointment, Daniel.
Here we go. Back to the waiver wire wonder. The nominees are as follows.
This goes to show you not every vote is equal.
Alvin Kamara, running back 3 for this year.
Okay.
Players that were not drafted in the top 160. Alvin Kamara finished the year as the 3rd best running back. Alex Smith, who finished the year as the 4th best quarterback. How about Greg the Leg Zuerlein?
Hi, poor guy.
Number 1 kicker, and he got
he was on the championship.
That's right. Robbie Anderson for the Jets. Shout out to Temple University. Wide receiver 18 for him. Stefania, the winner is
by unanimous vote, Alvin Kamara.
I mean, this one's easy.
Yeah, so easy.
It was an unanimous vote, and what's amazing is like Greg the Legatron, like. It's one of those ones where you wish you could give out more awards because Legatron was unbelievable.
And I love seeing a kicker. I love seeing a kicker in that role of waiver wire wonder.
Oh my goodness! And shout out to the Jets. You know, on the fantasy show, we used to have a joke about the Jets jar because we thought it was going to be such a fantasy wasteland that we were going to put a penny in every time we mentioned the Jets because it was, and it quickly filled up because we kept talking about how great Robbie Anderson was, and obviously Alex Smith, just a magical year for him and the Kansas City Chiefs. But Alvin Kamara. I mean, just
unbelievable.
I mean, you run out of superlatives to talk about him. 9 different games with 5 catches and 45 receiving yards. That's 3 more than any other running back. Starting in week 3, at least 11 fantasy points in every single game, but 1. I mean, guy was just a machine left and right.
And the point being that he was only drafted in 16.6% of leagues. He was not on people's radar until they saw what he could do. And it really was when the departure of Adrian Peterson and Ingram and Kamara shot up, both of them.
And the other thing that I was going to say, sorry, Field, this is great because you guys get to see me actually interrupt Field live in person as opposed to just hearing it all the time. But all I was going to say, poor Field's job is to try to keep the thing moving, and all I do is thwart that process. But whatever, we're here in a snowstorm. We've got 1 camera. Where are we going? You got nothing better to do? Come on. I certainly don't. The fact of the matter is yeah.
Thank you.
So. What I was going to say though is
all
about
the hearts are flying up because everybody knows.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. I'm here for you people. That's right. Heart it up. That's right. I'm not going anywhere. I give it all up for the people. That's right. Heart it up. Heart it up, America.
They're for Field.
No, they're not hearting it up for Field. Believe it or not, those hearts are for me. They're for Maddie, your boy Maddie. Anyway, what I was going to say here is that before even the great fantasy production, think about what Alvin Kamara did. It was the confidence that Sean Payton had in him from what he saw in training camp, in the preseason, and in practice, where he said, you know what? We don't need a future first ballot Hall of Famer and Adrian Peterson on this team anymore. That's how much confidence we have in a young rookie after just a couple of games. Because he was originally drafted to be sort of that Darren Sproles, Reggie Bush, third down pass catching role that we've seen in Peyton's offense. And they quickly realized, oh no, here's a guy that can do so much more.
He's also nominated for our next award, which is the Rookie of the Year. The nominees are in their finishes. For
that was
this
a trophy
season,
one?
which is going to be on this trophy. So give it a second.
Is Rookie of the Year on the trophy?
Oh, it's the green side on the trophy right here. Yep.
Here we go. The nominees for the Rookie of the Year are as follows. Alvin Kamara finished as running back 3.
Oh, don't give it away. We didn't even get to announce who it is yet.
Rookie of the Year, you told me to do it.
No, it's like, oh my gosh.
We're reading the nominees right now. How could we...
The nominees are Alvin Kamara, running back 3, Kareem Hunt, running back 4, Leonard Fournette, running back 9, Christian McCaffrey, running back 10.
And
we said we're doing it.
He's literally reading the nominees.
So
I'm literally reading them, and you're like, now? Do it now? Do I pull it now?
You're like nodding, yes, do it now.
I said it's the Rookie of the Year. You were hearing
the good news,
oh my
Daniel.
gosh.
Here's the good news.
Hang on. What is it? Your complaint is that I did it while I was reading the nominees?
Yes.
Matthew,
yes. I
You
said,
told me to go over and do
I
that
said,
for
so
Rookie of the
you
Year.
told me to give you a heads up when it's the trophy time. So I said, Matthew, it's trophy.
So I went over to, which is what we talked about in the
Oh my
pre-show
gosh.
meeting.
Okay, so Matthew, for a second, let somebody else
here's the
talk,
good-
okay?
yeah,
the
here's
good
the good
news
news.
is no one could see when you ripped it off because the lighting was poor where you had that trophy.
What a shock.
Stefania, the Rookie of the Year is...
It's almost as if we should have a director.
Again,
Yeah, go ahead.
by unanimous decision, Alvin Kamara.
Alvin
Yeah, he
Kamara.
was very
Bravo to
good.
him. So, allow me to say this. A lot of what there was to say about Alvin Kamara was just covered in that discussion. However, the ESPN Stats and Information Group, which is a phenomenal team that we have here at ESPN, just sent out a note to a lot of people on this distribution list about, yes, here's the title. Yes, a running back should be MVP, but not the one you're thinking. And this note, again, this comes from Stats and Information Group, presents that Alvin Kamara, first player in NFL history to have in one season 700 rushing yards, 800 receiving yards, and 300 kickoff return yards. A lot of other fantastic notes from the SIG group about Alvin Kamara, but no matter what way you slice it, he was the NFL Rookie of the Year in fantasy football.
Hey,
Let's
Matthew,
get to the best.
Matthew, are you ready for doing this
No,
the next
hang on
time?
for a second. Couple things. First off, I didn't get that email.
Okay.
Great. Thanks,
Okay.
Thanks, Stats and Information.
Well,
Let's get to the
But
best
the other
value.
thing is, wait, give me 1 second. I screwed up. I want to apologize. I messed up.
Wow.
I completely
Wait,
screwed
wait.
up.
I'm
owning it.
We haven't heard this
I'm just
before.
owning it. I own my own stuff. When I make a mistake, that was entirely my fault because I got lost because I thought we had just done Rookie of the Year because of Kamara because I know who's going to win. I don't want to brag, but I read ahead. Anyway, so I knew Kamara had won, and so Secret Squirrel was like, do the award now. So I ripped it off. I'm like, no, it's that award. And so to get up and move it over, I took out my earpiece because I'm attached because you guys can see like I've got this earpiece so that Secret Squirrel can talk to me. And anyway, I screwed up because I didn't understand. But it's one of the problems because we were supposed to have the trophy over there.
But you know what, Matthew? It means a lot.
It's my fault.
That coming through means a lot.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel.
I
best
completely
value.
own that. I completely own that. Sorry if I ruined that for the people watching. That Alvin Kamara was
did,
Rookie
but
of the
luckily
Year.
we've got more words to
The
get
best
to.
value is the player whose production exceeded their projected value based on the average draft position. This player had to be universally drafted to qualify. We'll get to the top free agents later on. The nominees are as follows. Mark Ingram, running back 6 for the season. His average draft position was 61.6. Carson Wentz, despite finishing the year on injured reserve, was quarterback 5.
Wow.
Average draft position was 128.9. Adam Thielen finished the year as wide receiver 9. His average draft position was 98.9. Back into the 10th round for Thielen. And then Evan Ingram, about the only bright spot on the Giants offense this year, tight end 5 with an ADP of 125.8. Starfania, the vote goes to...
There were 2 correct votes on this one.
Okay.
Field and myself. Then the winner was Adam Thielen.
I'm not going to say anything bad about Adam Thielen. I love Adam Thielen. I certainly understand the reasoning behind this. His ADP was as a 10th round pick, 98.9 overall. Finished the year as wide receiver 9, 5th in receiving yards per game. Thielen, unbelievable. only Antonio Brown, DeAndre Hopkins, and Keenan Allen had more fantasy points than Adam Thielen. So an unbelievable year, and to our awards point here, best value. Here's the thing that I will say, though, about Thielen. I voted for Evan Ingram, the correct response. Because, look, first off, talk about a better value. He was going in the 13th round and finished as a top 5 fantasy tight end. And my argument for voting for Ingram over Adam Thielen was that the position of tight end is so scarce to begin with, and this year was just a wasteland, especially when you think about guys like Greg Olsen who did nothing. And so Evan Ingram, who had the most fantasy points by a rookie tight end over the last 15 seasons, over 17 fantasy points, 173.6 fantasy points. He was a guy that had 11 different games with at least 8 fantasy points, the same amount as Rob Gronkowski or Zach Ertz. Second among tight ends in targets this season. He just had a monster year, which you just don't see out of any tight end, let alone a rookie tight end. So for me, in terms of best value, getting a top 5 fantasy tight end in round 13 to me was a slightly better value than a top 10 wide receiver in round 10.
All right, breakout player of the year is the player whose
Hang
production...
on, and now I'll go over and rip that one off for best value.
The player whose production exceeded expectations that had not previously emerged as a reliable fantasy asset. The nominees for the breakout player of the year, Carson Wentz, quarterback 5 for the season again, despite finishing the year on injured reserve. Alex Smith, quarterback 4 for the season. Robbie Anderson, wide receiver 18 for the season. And Nelson Aguilar, the Eagles' second-year wide receiver, who finished the year as wide receiver 23, a former first-round pick who many thought was a bust. The winner is...
Again, the majority decision here was 75%, so it must be Daniel who voted.
No, we had 12 voters for these.
Oh,
that's why
right. We had 12.
Yes, that's why we have the...
I was just blaming you because it was easy. The winner...
And we all voted for the same person.
We all voted for breakout player of the year, Carson Wentz.
Where to begin on Carson Wentz? Where to begin on Carson Wentz? He was on a playoff roster in 57.3% of leagues, the 5th highest rate amongst all players in ESPN fantasy. He was a trendy pick before the season to be a breakout quarterback, and it played out as we had kind of hoped for. He was unbelievable. I know you want to ramble about it, so I'll just let you have the floor.
Oh, thanks. I know you want to understand again the process that we discussed, and we could have changed it at the pre-show meeting, but you were going to read the nominees. Stefania's going to read the award. I was going to be the first person to talk. Again, we don't have to go by that. I'm just trying to go off of whatever. By the way, many people on the Twitter or the Periscope, whatever, commenting that they love to see a Cone talk. So a lot of Cone love. There, Stefania, on the
that I definitely blame Daniel for the pre-show.
So appreciate.
It was a really good picture of all three of you.
Yeah, a lot of people saying that. A lot of people
appreciate the picture.
By the way, a lot of people saying, "Hey, you need a light on the trophy." Thanks. That is a good suggestion. We are aware. We're going to put that in the suggestion box. The thing about Carson Wentz here, Field Yates, is that he only played 13 games and yet still finished second in the NFL in touchdown passes. Here's a guy that was on a playoff roster in over 57% of ESPN leagues, so it was nice to see that a number of fantasy players took advantage of how good he was. We talk about, again, the missed games. Russell Wilson, the only quarterback with more 20-point performances than Carson Wentz. And, yeah, it's interesting. Like, if you go back and look at my 100 facts column from the preseason, I did some math in terms of, like, Carson Wentz's I looked at Derek Carr from his progression, everything like that, in terms of the touchdown-interception ratio that he performed and the improvement he made over the years and everything like that. And I just basically I showed, like, if Carson Wentz, based on the numbers he had, which were better as a rookie than Derek Carr was as a rookie, if he has the same jump in performance that Derek Carr had, he'll be QB5. And he'd be a top 5 fantasy quarterback, and that's what ended up happening. Go back and look at the 100 facts if you care, but unbelievable. And when you think about this field, and I remember you tweeted this out at some point in the season, I think maybe when they extended Alshon Jeffrey, or they did the deal, but you just talked about all the skill players that the Philadelphia Eagles, and you're seeing here live footage of Field tweeting. You tweeted out the number of young, terrific players that the Eagles have under contract for a long time, starting with Carson Wentz and Alshon Jeffrey, and obviously and I'm trying to remember. I think some of their offensive linemen they had as well. Like it was an unbelievable nucleus. Zach Ertz, obviously, in the mix there.
Those players they have signed up long term. Yes, they have Lane Johnson. They've also got Rodney McLeod and Malcolm Jenkins. They're two safeties. They've got a
just an unbelievably long nucleus. I couldn't remember. You're the contract guy. I couldn't remember which guys they had on a contract and which they didn't. But the fact of the matter is that for those of you that have Carson Wentz in a keeper league,
built to last. Let's get to the playoff MVP, the player that held the most value during the postseason in ESPN Standard Leagues, week 14 to 17. The nominees are as follows. Todd Gurley, there's a familiar face, 123.1 points. He did not even play in week 17. Kareem Hunt had 92.5 points. He played in week 17. He had a carry for 35 yards and a touchdown. Le'Veon Bell, 87.7 points. Also did not play in week 17. DeAndre Hopkins, 70.4 points. Did not play in week 17. You're sensing a theme here. Stefania, without further ado, who's our playoff MVP?
Unanimous decision. Again, Todd Gurley, playoff MVP.
Todd Gurley, unbelievable this year in the postseason.
There's almost no explanation needed because he just produced so many points. I mean, it was so above and beyond what anybody else did.
Well, what was amazing is that Todd Gurley, who had I don't know if reputation is the right word, but a concern coming out of college that some people said he wasn't that good a pass catcher. And certainly under Jeff Fisher, you never really saw him involved in the passing game. And Sean McVay in the preseason, Field, we talked about this, how, and that I'd actually had a conversation with McVay at the Combine where he'd said, like, we're going to have a plan. He says, we're going to have a plan for Todd Gurley, and he's going to be a lot closer to his rookie year than he is his sophomore year from your perspective, meaning like fantasy, like, cause, he recognized me or whatever, knows what I do. And so, and so the
humble brag.
No, listen, you really want to go there, Mr. Bill Belichick and Bill O'Brien crossing the room to come say hi to Field at the Combine? Don't even get me started about like name droppers over there, like, please. So whatever. McVay, because I'm a huge Redskins homer, just whatever. I met him when he was an assistant with the Redskins. The fact of the matter is that Todd Gurley was used in the passing game so effectively, and I think it's just unbelievable that those skills were never used prior to this year in any significant way.
I think what you're saying is something about Jeff Fisher and maybe being a potential candidate for one of these vacant head coaching jobs.
That would be the greatest thing ever.
The player of the year for 2017.
Just as long as it's not the Redskins. Please bring Jeff Fisher back.
The best player in fantasy football in 2017. We've talked about a lot of these names so far, believe it or not. Todd Gurley.
I mean, come on.
Nominated. 383.3 points. Le'Veon Bell, 341.6 points. Antonio Brown, again, missed a chunk of the season, 310.3 points. DeAndre Hopkins, 309.8 points. And Stefania, without further ado, the big award everybody's been waiting for. Who gets it?
Player of the year, leading in fantasy point production. You just announced the numbers by 41.7 more than the number 2 candidate in Le'Veon Bell, Todd Gurley.
Unanimous. I mean, and it's a shame, really, because Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown, DeAndre Hopkins had monster years. Alvin Kamara had a monster year. Kareem Hunt had it was a dip there in the season, but still ended up the year fantastic. And so whether it was, whether it's the playoff MVP, because Kareem Hunt certainly had an amazing playoff run there, whether it was the full season, there's so many players in any normal year that you could make a strong case for. This wasn't a normal year. It was Todd Gurley's year, and it wasn't even close, Field.
I still like the note that we heard Alden Gonzalez, who covers the team for us for ESPN.com, had said that Kara Henderson, wife of Les Snead, the GM of the Rams, had a note from when they met with Sean McVay earlier, like preseason, where he was talking about how excited he was to use Todd Gurley in the passing game and how he was going to have a crazy season. And she said the numbers seemed so crazy that she just wrote them down and went back. And not only had he met, but he'd exceeded the targets in like 3 of the 4 areas. And the only thing Sean McVay was kicking himself about was that he hadn't gotten Todd Gurley more touchdowns. Yeah. So if you think that he thinks there's more for him to be able to do, imagine what could happen next year.
Imagine how much we overlook player development so routinely and consistently in the NFL. A good coach and a talented player was the perfect match for fantasy football in 2017. Todd Gurley.
Honestly, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
This could really just be the Todd Gurley show. It's what it's been all about him.
It really is. We should, instead of the 06-0-10s, we could have named them the Gurleys.
Yeah.
But what's interesting to me is when you talk about player development, and again, not to sort of bag on Jeff Fisher, but I'm going to bag on Jeff Fisher here for a second.
First time for everything, right?
Yeah, exactly. You guys know I'm not a fan of Jeff Fisher, but when you look at forget Todd Gurley for a second. But when you think about Jared Goff, Case Keenum, and Nick Foles, 3 former Jeff Fisher quarterbacks, all in the playoffs this year, and we'll see what happens with Nick Foles. It's obviously been he's in there only because of Wentz, and it's certainly been up and down so far for him as a starting quarterback with the Philadelphia Eagles. But the fact of the matter is that Case Keenum and Jared Goff, who both looked frankly lost and like, whatever, run of the mill, out of the league soon quarterbacks under Jeff Fisher, are both, legit candidates for the MVP, for quarterback of the year. Now, they're not going to win it. It's either going to be Brady or Todd Gurley. But the fact of the matter is you could legitimately make a case for either one of those guys. And so it just goes to show you whether it's Pat Shurmur and Mike Zimmer in Minnesota, whether it's Sean McVay and Greg Olson, the quarterbacks coach in Los Angeles, and certainly shout out to Les Snead for putting the right pieces around Jared Goff. It's unbelievable what they've done since they've been no longer coached by Jeff Fisher.
What we need to do is hire a great coach for this podcast. The next year we can be awesome.
Absolutely.
That's our goal.
Sorry,
our
Secret
pledge.
Squirrel, the Jeff Fisher of the 060.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, that's all of our hardware, by the way, for the 2017 season.
Why don't we take a couple of minutes and answer some comments on the Periscope?
You know what's a great idea?
Let's
let Matthew decide what we're going to do on the podcast. That's a good idea. We'll just do a live.
You know what? I'm sorry. Because, you know what? You can make fun all you want, but had Matthew been in charge, had Matthew made the decisions, we
wouldn't be here today.
We wouldn't have been here today. Or if we were going to be here today, we would have had a director. We would have had all three cameras.
I know, buddy.
We would have had this where it was light, where it was lit.
Lidded. Yeah.
Where it was lidded.
Yeah.
It's lit.
It's lit.
It was not lit. I will say that. That's my bad. It was not lit.
I'm just going to rip them off, by the way.
Let's take a couple of questions.
Let's take a couple of questions. Why don't you read them?
There's a
it's
question
hard to
here.
read on the screen that I have here.
So I have one here from @AwesomeDude744. It says, what's your thoughts on DeMarco Murray, Stefania? Looking at DeMarco Murray ahead to next year.
Well, look, I mean, even when he was playing, he wasn't consistently productive this year. I think you saw that he lost a step. I think the wear and tear had an effect on him, and it's going to be hard. I think he's going to drop next year for sure.
I think the big question is where he's playing next year. Is he in Tennessee with the Titans? Look at the contract. Would not be a surprise if he is playing elsewhere next season in a backup role.
So with that, in a follow-up question, where would Derrick Henry fall? Obviously very early. Would he be a top 20, top 15, top 10 guy?
You know what? That's a great question, Secret Squirrel, and allows me to mention, or not cool Keith can, the fact of the matter is that Field Yates, Mike Clay, myself, Matt Bowen, and Eric Karabell have all published our way too early 2018 rankings. So you can go to ESPN.com right now to see our way too early top 20 rankings. I will tell you right now for myself, I have currently, I have Derrick Henry at 24, although what I will say is that how I did my rankings in Field, I'm curious how you did yours, but how I did my rankings, and I mentioned this in my love-hate column from the previous year, is that I did my rankings as the NFL is today, which is to mean that DeMarco Murray is still on the Tennessee Titans, and in theory, some sort of timeshare. If Derrick Henry were to have the job to himself, if DeMarco Murray moves on, which I agree with you, I think is probably where it happens, I think he's somewhere between 10 and 20. My guess he's in the 14 to 16, 17 range for me.
I have him at 17, and to answer your question about how I did my ranks, I did them with a bit of a blend. Yes, how the NFL is now, but like projecting. Do I think it's likely that Teddy Bridgewater and Case Keenum are both in Minnesota next year? No, I don't. Mm-mm. That's why I had Teddy Bridgewater included in my quarterback ranks, for example. Do I think that it's likely that Derrick Henry is a better bet as a starter next year than DeMarco Murray? Yes, I do, which is why I have him 17.
Yeah, I mean, I have him at 24. I'm again, because I have DeMarco Murray and Derrick Henry both on the Titans at the same time. But yes, if DeMarco Murray would move on, which is the expectation, I would move him up. I think we're both pretty bullish on Derrick Henry as a starting running back next year.
Next question is from @RJoves. Is Jimmy G a top 10 quarterback in 2018?
I think he's darn close.
Go ahead. Let the people see how. Look at Stefania's grin.
The glow.
Can you see that? Whenever we mention Jimmy Garoppolo, Stefania just
Jimmy GQ,
does one of these.
Jimmy the GOAT, Jimmy the greatest.
You want to answer that with my ranking, Stefania?
Yes, I do. What's your ranking, Field?
Let's see. Number 10.
Yes.
Wow.
He makes it.
Jimmy
And so
Garoppolo.
Field, unbiased,
Right.
Field Yates.
I
has him ranked in the top 10.
I have him as QB 13, and I might be too low.
I do, frankly. You are too low.
Well, we'll see. I mean,
so I challenge people to on the stream name the top 3 wide receivers to finish the season in San Francisco. Obviously, Marquise Goodwin emerged down the stretch, but Pierre Garçon on injured reserve. Trent Taylor was a ninth pick, fifth round pick out of Louisiana Tech. Imagine if this team, which has...
And Kittle will be more utilized next year as well.
Imagine if they go out in free agency or the draft and potentially acquire offensive difference makers, whether it's, I don't think it'll last that long, but Saquon Barkley out of Penn State to complement the backfield.
Right.
They got a bunch of money in free agency. Guys like Sammy Watkins could be available. Just imagine Jimmy Garoppolo playing with a higher level of talent at wide receiver. I think he's got a great case.
And by the way, a full year, Kyle Shanahan's system is fairly complicated. I remember Matt Ryan hearing an interview with Matt Ryan talking about how much more comfortable he felt in Kyle's system in year 2 than he did in year 1. Because there's just so much to learn. Some systems are fairly simple. Kyle's is fairly complicated, but once you master it, obviously, it's obviously a tremendous system that's worked every stop Kyle's ever been. And so think about Jimmy Garoppolo, who's traded mid-season, and all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, he's shoved into a lineup with not a great offensive line. To your point,
they had a lot of their line is on injured reserve.
Exactly.
So
So a banged up offensive line, a sort of a mismatch of wide receivers. So now you go into the offseason, assuming, and we expect, Garoppolo to be back in San Francisco, that gets worked out. He's obviously a free agent, but we figure whether he gets franchise tagged or whatever, he'll be back in San Francisco.
Pretty safe bet he's not going anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. So, a whole year of knowing he's the guy, working with Kyle in the offseason. I agree with you. They'll get better weapons around him. Again, like I said, I'm at 13 and I might be too low on him. I currently have Dak Prescott and Ben Roethlisberger ahead of Garoppolo outside the top 10. He could easily jump both those guys.
All right, next question comes from @Jose Gonzalez. Will Mike Evans bounce back next year? It was a pretty big down year for Mike Evans this year.
That is a really interesting one. Well, it depends on the Jameis Winston progression too. I think we kept hearing that it was going to happen this year, and I know he had the shoulder injury and that was part of it, but I don't think we really saw the progression you were hoping for.
I was going to say, and if bouncing back, like if the crater for Mike Evans is over 1,000 yards, which is where he was this year, not bad. If that's the floor for Mike Evans, and I get it was not as consistent as some of
it's the up and down.
No doubt.
Which in fantasy is the frustrating part.
Where'd you rank him next year?
I think I have him at 7 in my wide receiver ranks.
Yeah, I have him at 9, so I'm just slightly lower than you, but both of us have him as a top 10 wide receiver next year.
Yep.
Okay, last question. This one comes from Alec Gonzalez. Can both Ingram and Alvin Kamara be top 10 running backs for a second year in a row?
I have him ranked as such.
As do I.
Yeah.
I have Alvin Kamara ahead of Mark Ingram.
As do I.
I've got Alvin Kamara at 6th and Mark Ingram at 10. It's really difficult to sustain 2 top 10 running backs for a full season. At this point, though, I'm not betting against those guys, right?
I have Kamara at 8 and I have Ingram at 10. We both agree that. Look, I think it'll be interesting to see what happens with this Saints offense. Does Drew Brees come back? I'm not convinced that happens. Field Yates. He's a free agent at the end of this year. I am not convinced that happens.
Yep.
I'm hearing some rumblings. Who knows? Who knows where it all goes, obviously. I'm sure, the Saints would love to have him back, but, who knows? At this point in Drew Brees' career, stranger things have certainly happened. But regardless, the Saints made a philosophical shift this year to become more of a running offense. We've seen that more and more recently, last couple of years as Drew Brees gets further into the later stages of his career, if you will, that they want to take more pressure off him, become more balanced. And to be honest, their defense got better. That was the biggest thing here, is that Drew Brees no longer had to get into these crazy shootouts because their defense was so awful. The Saints found a defense this year, and they could be more balanced, and they could run more, which Sean Payton has always liked to do. If you look at traditionally, they've always run when they got in close. And so I could certainly see, again, behind a really good offensive line, with those two running backs, the Saints have had one of their most successful seasons in a long time. I mean, I think this is the most successful season the Saints have had since their Super Bowl run, I think, or it would be close, right?
So it certainly has. It could be another Super Bowl run for them coming up here.
100%. So if you're Sean Payton, why would you go away from what's working so well this year?
As they say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. All right, that's our awards. Thanks for the questions there. Thank you, everybody who listened to the podcast.
So here's a question. When you say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, Secret School, do you think we will fix If we ever do this again, like a live broadcast, will we fix anything?
I hope so. I think probably Field and Stefania and Mike Clay will get it right next time, and it won't be a problem.
To all those that listen to the podcast throughout the season, we are immensely indebted to you for all of your loyalty and your listenership. We appreciate it. We had a ton of fun this year. It's been a great year. Matthew, Stefania, congratulations on all the success of the TV show as well. Stefania, as always, the best in the business of what you do, and that is undisputed. We'll have some content. You'll be hearing from us, seeing us, but in the meantime, the best way to kind of keep in touch with us, find us all on Twitter, which you found this link through Twitter, so just go find Matthew Berry TMR, Stefania_ESPN, or Field Yates. Follow us if you want to see our content. Maybe you want our takes on things that have nothing to do with fantasy football. We'll have some of those as well.
I just want to take a moment and first off, thank you for congratulating me on the success of my show as opposed to Daniel. Normally people just congratulate Daniel on the success of the TV show. So we're thrilled with that. But all jokes aside, seriously, as much fun as the three of us and Daniel have doing the shows, whether it's here in a studio or when we go out live to see everyone, we could not do it if it were not for the unbelievable, amazing, incredible, and frankly slightly insane support of 0610 Nation. You guys are unbelievable, the best fans. We always say, and we've talked about this, like as much as I love the fans of the 0610, as much as I love the fans of like whether it's my column or the TV show or anything like that, the fans of the 0601 are better. So by the way, that is not cool, Keith.
Not cool, Keith.
You guys know the TV star Secret Squirrel Daniel Dopp. That's Thirsty Kyle Soppe.
No longer thirsty. He is now appropriately quenched. So we thank these three. They have been unbelievable for us.
We could not do this show without you guys. Literally.
Yeah, so
I mean, it
100%.
does not happen without
put
them,
in,
without the audience.
A tireless amount of work. You would maybe now that you've seen it live, you would realize how much work has to go into making me semi-presentable to a podcasting audience. It really does take a village there. You can follow Keith on Twitter at Keith Lipscomb. You can follow Secret Squirrel, obviously, at Daniel Dopp and at Kyle Soppe ESPN, SOPPE, at Kyle Soppe ESPN.
Thank you to all those who listened. We'll talk to you guys, some point soon.
Yes, we will. And for those of you on the East Coast, please be safe. Please be safe. It is brutal out there. Don't leave your houses to do something dumb like a podcast. Oh my God, this is so uncomfortable.
Oh my God.
Oh God. That felt so good, Matthew.
Wow.
For the first time in 2018. Peace out!
The theme song of the Fantasy Focus was created and performed by Eric Hutchinson. Check out more of his music at erichutchinson.com. Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Focus Football Podcast. For more great podcasts, listen on the ESPN app or subscribe on iTunes.